what wound up happening is after that first, they said it had 150 tons, over 150 tons. After the first 2-3 weeks, what they realized was that almost nearly 400,000 pounds was only about a week's work. That's when they knew what kind of a can of fish they opened up. Then when they started affecting these arrests, the first 38 went, and then it's so on and so on. And it happened by way of, you asked this earlier, by way of a guy that was part of the crew, had been part of the crew born and raised there.
Right.
Was doing some crazy cocaine shit in Colombia and got himself busted and put in prison. Well, the U.S. government found out that he was in prison down there and who he was, where he lived and all this kind of crap, and he was associated with us. They went down there and offered him a deal, said, look, we'll get you out of here if you can do this for us. We need, this is what we need. Well, they got him out and brought him back, put him right back into our group. We never knew he was gone. We never knew he was in Colombia, never knew he was, had any problems or anything like that. He just all of a sudden, he was gone. Now he's there. Hired him as a chase boat driver.
Oh, no.
For a job that I put together with 57,000 pounds because I was splitting the load between two places, Pine Island and Everglades City. And he was the chase boat driver on the Pine Island side of it. So they knew about it right from the get-go. Now, what happens is the bust goes down. Nobody gets caught. They get all. It was in the paper actually back then. They called it the Pine Island dump because there was weed everywhere, man. Then everybody took off like flies, gone. So this guy who they caught. I'm not going to say any names.
Yeah.
The guy that they caught, starts telling some of the younger crew. These guys, dude, it's over. They got you, man. They get you. They know your name. They know who you are. Blah blah blah. They've changed everything around now. It's a mandatory 40 years, brother. You're gone at least 40 years, no doubt about it. And there's no parole, none. You do 85% of your time, and when you tell a 19, 20-year-old kid that, he's going to tell him his fucking grandma.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
So it started out with just a couple of them, a couple of the younger guys that they knew they could roll. And then that's when the shit started to happen. The people started becoming visible because names were being said. And it began a domino effect. But along with that domino effect, and this is an interesting part about it. Now, this was information given to me by the supervisor for United States Homeland Security here in Southwest Florida and the supervisor for United States Customs at the time told me that they understood that, while they're effecting these arrests, that they're only arresting kids. All the adults have already been arrested, man. There's nothing but kids left. So giving a mandatory life sentence and all these ridiculous $1 million fines to a bunch of kids just didn't really kind of sit good with them, didn't sit with them. So what they did was, by design rather than by accident, they incorporated within these plea agreements to the people that they're catching, these kids that they're catching, they say, look, you tell us everything you know, everybody you know, everything that you've done. We'll give you immunity from prosecution from everything that you've done. Except for one count. We'll hold one count back so we can, we got to give you something.
Yeah.
And at that point, depending on their cooperation, how substantial or whatever it may be.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by the best bongs in the business. With Freeze Pipe's freezable glycerin coils, you will enjoy colder, bigger hits without the throat burning or intense coughing. Check out Freeze Pipe's entire line of unique pipes, bubblers, bongs, and dab rigs at thefreezepipe.com and use the code CONCRETE to save 10% off your first order. That's thefreezepipe.com and use the code KONCRETE.
Would determine whether you got going home, you getting parole, you getting 2 years, you getting a year, what are you going to get? Now they can sentence you if you cooperate. Guidelines state they can now sentence you below the mandatory minimums. That's the only way you're dodging a life sentence is if you cooperate. So what happened was, by the language of that cooperation plea agreement, was by giving them immunity. Jimmy can tell on you. Freddie can tell on you. Your name's already been spoken. You got immunity. You can't be hurt. They get immunity. They get immunity. Everybody's telling and running and saying names, but they all have immunity, so they can't hurt one another.
Right.
And it was an amazing thing about how they did it was, and it didn't matter that at the time that, you know, a lot of the guys are saying a lot of the same names. All that told the government was they're getting all the right people. But putting kids away for life, for hauling pot, when just the year before their fathers and uncles and grandpas and cousins and shit are doing 8, 10, 12 months and getting home and going home, and you're going to get a life sentence for it, didn't really set easy for them. But what it did manage to do was,
glad the government was able to find its conscience.
well, yeah, I mean, it was unprecedented.
Yeah.
You know, in the fact that, you know, if it hadn't have been, you know, us kids, you know, if it had been a bunch of guys toting guns and shooting, and
right.
that was another thing too. None of us carried guns.
Right.
Fuck, man, we could run around with cutoffs and bare feet.
Right.
You know, that was the
right.
the clothing you wore. That was the island garb, man. You know, you worked on the boat. You go out crab fishing. You got on a pair of slickers and a pair of boots,
right,
fishing boots, and under that you got a pair of cutoffs on. So what they weren't willing to do at that time when they pronounced these significant sentences or these guidelines was put away kids for the rest of their lives. So what they did was they offered them this agreement, and within the agreement was that clause, was that escape valve, which allowed everybody to say, look, dude, they said your name, John. Dude, you're going to prison. But if you cooperate with them, tell them me, tell them my name, give them Jimmy's name, give them Fred's, give them Paul's name. Tell on them. Cooperate with them. And you can't hurt them. They already got immunity.
Right.
See? So it worked out great. And it comes to a guy like me, fuckers, they want to know who I'm seeing in Miami all the time, who I'm flying, where am I flying out of the country to 2-3 times a month. And we know, we got pictures of the plane. You get on and you get off. You know, they had everything, man. And I said, well, you know what, guys? I said, this is something that you're going to have to figure out on your own. I said, because if I start that shit, I'm opening up a can of worms that just can't put the lid back on. Even though throughout all the years that this was done, it was, you know, our fathers and uncles and grandpas and people like that and us kids, not a single shot was ever fired. Not a gun was ever seen. I never saw a fucking gun.
That's fun. That's crazy, man.
And there's a really very simple reason for that. It's because of the sheer volume of money that's being made.
Right.
And the amount of money being put forth to make that. It was very insignificant to make, you know.
But what made the cocaine aspect of it in Miami? Why was there so much death? There was like an untold amount of death in Miami.
Because it was very easy to bring into the country. Because of, you know, if you bring 10,000 pounds of cocaine in the country, you can do it relatively easy. 10,000 pounds of fucking weed would fill this room.
Right.
You know, that and the fact that there's more money involved in it. Lot more money, because you can take that pure cocaine and you can chop it down to make 1 kilo into 4. But by the time that kilo gets to the United States, it's worth, at that time I think kilos were about 30 grand. Now they're somewhere around 65 grand. But you can turn that $30,000 into, you know, almost $1 million if you're a dealer. You know, so that's the reason for the big deal with cocaine. Then the crack came along.
Right.
You know, so now you're making more money off the cocaine by selling the crack rocks,
right?
You know, and that kind of thing. I really don't know how the chemistry works or how the math works on all of that, but I just know that, you know, it's something that we never agreed with, really. I mean, we all had our share of coke and we'd do it, you know, till we got sick of doing it, but wanting to get into doing that now.